Okay, we got the replacement set of cases came in. These are the Ultima cases. First set there, they put the main bearing over here in there sideways, so it didn't line up with the crank. It was going like, instead of being straight like that, it was going like that. So it didn't work very well. And we also had some interference problems over here down inside here with the crank pin. So it looks like they cut that away also. They said they're going to modify their manufacturing of these so that they would clear like this now. And they also went ahead and bored these out for big bore cylinders for me, for my set. I told them exactly what size these ones were, and fit right on there. And see, there's no extra clearance. They're not rattling around like most of them do. So that's nice of them. And they got them to me in a couple days also, which is good. So we lost only a week assembly time on this motor. So let's see how this other set fits. These are 80s Japanese import or Taiwan imports. So pretty close fit there. This is a two-handed operation, it looks like. Take that one out. This one's a little bit precision. I think the paint on there is going to be a problem. Yep. Alright, let's try that one more time. There you go. It has to go in straight. So you can hear the clearance. It's only got a couple thou clearance. Easy when you get aftermarket cases, you got about 10 to 15 thou clearance on the cylinders. There you go. So those are both up on there like they should be. The only thing I do, I'm gonna have to assemble up the studs myself. Oh well, minor problem. So anyway, they look pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these apart and see how square they are over the milling machine. And then we'll try to assemble this thing and see if it actually bolts together this time. So I'm going to go ahead and take these apart and get back to it. Alright, we got the case over here in the mill. We got the bearing all centered up right now. Pretty much just over 5. You spin it around. It's right 5 even right there. So it moved again on me a little bit. Alright, well we're half a thou out. So we go ahead and put it to the bottom of the hole down here. So now we drop down. And we see what we got. Looks like we're still about 5. A thou up right there. Drops back to half. And we're right back at 5. So looks like we're only getting 1,000 total difference, which means we're only half a thou out on our being square in there. So that's a good sign. Now we'll go ahead and check the edge of the case right over here. Before we were getting 18.5 thou, as I recall, which is not very good. So we're going to run across the top of this bearing here. Okay, we're going to give it 1,000. That's all we're going to give it. Went off scale right there. Let's go ahead and crank it up to 0. Where are we at here? Dark back here. So we're 1 thou up, 0. Across the hole, 1 thou down, 2 thou. 3 thou down. And it goes back up on the other side. So we're 3 on that way, and I think we're 1 over on this way. Way back here, I think we're 1 over, yeah. So we're bouncing around pretty good right there. We're good there. And then it drops here. So our high spot is right here. Our low spot's over here, 90 degrees away. So, yep, there it is. There's our low spot. So high and low are this far apart. That usually means it's a problem with machining, not with squareness. Because squareness had to be equally on both sides. So it'd be high and low, 180 apart. When you're 90 degrees apart, there's another issue going on. Their cutter wasn't quite perfect. But we got 5 thou total, so 4 thou. Need about 4. So definitely a lot better than 18. The biggest thing is the race was only a 1 thou out, so it's a half a thou out, which is pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put the crank into the other side, check to make sure the crank pin clears on that. And then we'll bolt this together and see if this case house goes on. I'm going to have to check this bearing fit here to make sure it'll even go in that case. I'll probably have to change my rollers on the crank. So we'll go ahead and play with that stuff next. Okay, we're going to check these cases out here and see about some clearances on the bearings and stuff. See how good they are this time on this stuff. Last time they were oversized and real rough on the finish and the honing. This time they're a little bit better on the smoothness, but they're still rough. Let's see what our size is. Yeah, they're still a little bit on the big side. The industrial standard seems to be about 12 tenths over, and they're looks like they're about 13.5 to 15. Oop, there's a tight spot right there. Ooh, it's getting worse, not better. Yeah, 10.5. 12.5 there. Ooh, what's going on up here? That sucks. 17 way up there. This thing's tapered real bad. It's almost 2 at the very top here. You can just barely see it with the... So this way here we are at 15.5, 16. And we are over right at 2. So that pretty well sucks. They're a lot better before on the side, on the straightness and trueness. This one tapered real bad, not around. I think I was using 18 tenths on the other case, so that means bearing's not going to fit very good. Not as good as I wanted it to anyway. Okay, now this one here, we're going to have to put the crank in here. See what this thing feels like. See if it clears. So I'm going to go ahead and get that set up and we'll get back. Alright, got our crankshaft here. Got the case lipless block so it'll clear the sprocket shaft. Hopefully. Let's see what happens here. Ugh. It's not hitting, that's a good sign. That's weird. Crank's really offset in the case though. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's see what's going on here. Bearing looks good. You can see where they put down a cut 25 thou right here. So they cut that off this surface here. You can see where they cut through the screw heads. Same thing I was doing when I did mine, except they only cut 20. So we are clearing in that respect. What I don't like is the whole offset of the crank is way heavy to the left. I don't think this rat case will go on these bearings without honing. Nope. Oh, it slid on. So we're sitting on a Timken right now. So let's show you what the problem is for right now that I'm seeing. Now, this is where the crank's going to sit in the motor because it's on the Timken bearing right now. Now, theoretically, everything should be right in the middle. I don't know if you can see right here, but this rod is not in the middle. It's actually quite a bit below the middle. This here is the middle. So you can see how about 3/4 of the rod is below the line there. So that means this whole crank is offset about 1/8 of an inch too far to the left, most likely. Because right now, unless you've got an offset wrist pin or a lot of clearance on this side of the rod right here, your piston's going to be bottomed out inside of it. Here's our piston right here. Pistons do not offset side to side stock. They are centered this direction. They can be offset front to rear on this view for different reasons, but they are always on center this direction. Now, if you got the crank offset 1/8 of an inch, that means this wrist pin would have to be offset 1/8 of an inch, or it would have to have a lot of clearance in it. If you look right in here, I only have 1/8 of an inch total clearance. That means the most I can have is a 1/16 offset, and then we're going to have some bending issues on our crank. Because when you put the cylinder up in here, it should be on center. So what we need to do is put the cylinders up on here and check to see where we're at. Because right now this crank is pretty far down from where it should be. So that is not a good thing. So more unexpected surprises. So which cylinder are we on? We're on the front one. Front cylinder. Okay, now this cutout right here should be centered. Without having the studs on here, it's a little bit hard to check stuff. Let's see, give me a couple of studs out of the kit here. Not going in straight. See if the cylinders will even go on over these studs. Okay, they fit. Of course, they bottom out up in here, so I can't do my check I want to do. Go ahead and mark it right where the gasket surface is. Pull it out and measure it. 1.5 inches. Inch and 5/8. So the cylinders are not all set. So that means the crank is way off center. What I measured is right here. Here's our mark. The gasket strip is right on the bottom of this mark. If you go to center the hole over here, I think this light is probably hurting more than it's helping. Okay, if you go from the center of the hole to the edge of that line, it's 1 5/8 inches. If you go from the center of the edge of that line to the center hole this way, it's 1 5/8 on center. So the cylinder itself is not offset, but the rod is. So that means the piston has to be offset, which it isn't. So that means I'm going to have to figure out what's going to go happen on that one. So that's not too good. So I'm going to go ahead and get this rice case honed out right here so I can put it on my crank, and then we'll come back and see how they bolt together. Okay, I got the case honed out here. See how much smoother that is or not. The light on there might help. See how nice and shiny it is on the inside of it now. Definitely a lot smoother than what they did. Alright, so 24 is what the other case was at. So we'll see right there we're at 24. We're at 26.5 here at the top. Turn it 90 degrees. Up here at the top, we're up here at about 27.5. And down here at the bottom, we're at 25. Right there, 25, 25.25. In the middle, we're about 26 there, it looks like. So I straightened out a lot of what they had problem there, but slightly bigger, but it's within 1/4 of a thou now, more or less, of size, so not a total loss, but not too good. Kind of crappy for me, but a lot better than it was. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put this on top of the left case over here and see where that crank is going to be and see if it rotates. So that's the big plus. See if it works. Okay. So like before, it doesn't want to slide down. Unlike before, it actually goes down though. I don't feel that binding like it was. That's a big plus. Now what we don't like right now is this whole assembly is offset to the left. So let's see how much in-play we have in this thing. See how much in-play is in here. Not that much we're hitting right there. I think I'm caulking it a little bit too. Okay, let's pull this off the blocks, tighten it up, take a look at it. Okay, I'm going to throw a couple bolts in here. Idea what we have. bolts are in. So that's our in play. I do not have the Timken bearing over here right now, that's why it's got a lot of in play in it. So the crank is sliding back and forth easily, which is a big plus from what it was before. So the crank spins like it's supposed to now. It's back and forth, unlike the last one it wouldn't do that. So they got the alignment right in that respect. What I don't like is the whole crank itself is offset to the left a lot. So let me blow this up here so you can see how much air we have. Oop, wrong direction. So right here's what we're worried about. So the parting lip's right where my finger is. You pull it all the way to the left. It's right here on the side of this beam right here, which is a lot better than it was, but it's still offset. Here's your parting lips right here. It's not as bad as it looked before, but let's see what it looks like on this one here. Okay, it's not staying over the side of the case. See, it drops back off the Timken, that's why it doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Timken bearing on this side and get an idea about what our offset is. So we'll go ahead and pull that over right now and do that, and then we'll know. Okay, we got the crank pulled into the case. We still got the whole tool over here for holding it together so it doesn't move. Go ahead and put this right case back on it again. Goes on my hands, that's good. It definitely looks like the case is made correctly in that respect. Okay, they're tightened up. It spins nice and free. So it's supposed to. Got our end play in there just a little bit like we wanted. Now, what I don't like is why we don't have our rod centered up. And you can just see how far off things are at. Yeah, I'm going to pull this camera off of here. Can't see squat when you're 2 feet away from everything. So here's our parting lip right here. You can almost see it. There it is. You can see that's right up on the edge of this rod way over here in the mark, so you're off half that width, which is at least a 1/16 of an inch. It's more than that actually, but it's quite a bit. We look at the back rod, and even though this one's polished, you can definitely see that it's further over to the left than the right side is. This rod's been polished. Racing tricks. Oh. That came out. And you can also see it down in here. You can see how close the flywheel is to the bore here, and you can see how far away it is over here quite a bit. So this whole crank is offset. The whole thing is offset to the left, which is toward this way over here. So, like I said, with our pistons the way they are, it's going to be hard to tolerate that much of an offset. What's wrong with that thing? It's not even close to going in. There it goes. There. Fighting me. Of course, using one hand doesn't help. Alright, camera off. Up here. I can't work with one hand. Not all the time. Pain in the ass trying to. Alright, we'll see if this camera falls down now. Alright, now I can do some real work. This is a quick and simple test here. Get the stud out of the way. We can see if the piston will actually offset far enough to center up on what we're doing. Let me see if I can't show you. Whole pain in the butt. That didn't work very well. Okay, might be able to see now, maybe. Okay, here's our parting lip, center of the piston. I'll make sure we can get over center to make sure it centers up in our rod. And you can see when we go all the way to the right, we are right there almost. It might actually be right there. Definitely is no extra. That's the parting lip right there. There's nothing working today. Oh. Everything's fighting me. Oh, there goes the... Okay, we're back. Equipment failure. Trying to do too much with no tools. So, I don't know if you can see it, but we are basically right, just hitting the center of that piston, kind of. So, there's no room for flux in the rod or the crank with it offset like that, far over. So I got to look at the old case, see how much his crank was offset in it, and then find out what I'm going to do about this. I'm not too sure. Case is made wrong again, I think. So I'll do some more comparisons tomorrow. I'll get his old case back and look at it, see what's going on. But right now it'll kind of work, but absolutely no room for clearances or errors. That's on the back rod. The front rod, I'm not sure where it's going to be, but probably about the same. So anyway, that's where we're at for now. Okay, I just found the fix here for the case being machined wrong over there. I'll pull this Timken bearing off. And we have these right-hand main bearing washers. These are the ones that go on the floor again. Fucking hammer. These are the washers that go back under here. The stock ones are 73 to 75 thou thick, somewhere in the area. And then S&S makes these special thin ones that are 50 thou thick for oddball applications. Like you're trying to put these bearings on 77 or 87 later pinion shafts. So, I'm going to take this one of these. This is 50 thou. We're about 60 thou off center. So 50 will get us right in the ballpark. So I'll go ahead and put this on there. This fits over the shaft nice and snug, so it won't rattle. And you can see where the Timken bearing is right here. And it hits right on the Timken bearing, so it's the same size. So it'll do exactly the same thing as if this was on the hitting against the crank. It's going to be hitting on the washer. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this all together. I'll put this down, and we'll see what's going to happen. Any luck, this time it'll work. At least be usable. So I'll put this in my tool over here on the vise and run this thing on down. Where is my tool? The bearing slips down like that, that's the bad crank. Alright. So there's that side. Okay, our bearing is right here. So here's the other Timken bearing with a stock spacer. This is our left side case, so you gotta make sure you don't forget to put the washer on there. Always put that on first before you put the case down so you can see it's on there. Then you put the case down. Make sure the rods are in the holes where they belong over there. And screw it on down. Make sure it's tight. Case is free, so you know it's got clearance. Bang. Crush and bang. Okay. Definitely a step in the right direction. Okay, so here's our front rod. You see we're still off center, but we're a lot closer. And then the other rod, go around, quit moving on me. And you can see how this rod here is pretty close to being centered. Blow that up a little bit. So you can see we can probably put that 70 thou washer and that probably would center it right up. But I'm worried about this crank pin hitting inside the case, so we got to pay attention to that before we do something like that. So, yeah, there's my case wrench too. Now we go ahead and just bolt this other case half on there. Blow that back a little bit. And make sure we have clearance. We don't want to fix one problem and cause another one. See how this goes. When you fix one thing, you got a whole bunch of other problems crop up. Slips all the way in good. Make sure we're not hitting before we bolt anything together. Not hitting. Worst thing you can do is pull it together under load and have it hitting. You will definitely have to reach through the crank if you do that. Okay. Where did my socket run off to? Now all of this stuff here is what you do not normally have to do when you put a motor together. Make sure it's not hitting anything. It's free. Should check that one, tighten the first bolt down. Okay, so now that's all bolted in. We're not hitting on anything. We can definitely go further than we got. Yeah, jockey that over there, we can see it a little bit. Yep, wrong direction. So you can see, you can't see squat now. Try not to move the camera back and forth 15 times, but oh well. We're tearing up our pistons and everything over on the other side of the bench. Okay, so now the rod comes up. Part inlet's right there on my thumb. You get the view right dead center, and you can see, stupid leg out of my way. Turn the light off. I think the light hurts. So if you look at it now, you can now see that we're almost centered, but we're still off by about 20 thou or so, at least 25. So that would be the thickness of that washer if we put the big one in there. What we want to make sure is we got clearance. See, now we got tons of clearance over here on the left side. But we got to make sure we got clearance down here on the right side. And of course you can't see in there with that light. So you look down in here with this light. It's really hard to see in there. Yeah, camera doesn't really help you any. But the crank pin that I can see in there, you can just kind of see, right there you can see it. We only got about 40-50 thou clearance crank pin to the back of the cam bushing hole there. So I don't want to push it in any further than that. And actually what we want to do is check the cam and make sure the cam doesn't stick through and cause a problem. So that could be another issue. So we'll go ahead and check that right now to make sure that's not a problem. Like I said, you fix one thing, you open up a big can of worms on something else. So here's our washers. So we got our inner washer and our shim washer. So you stick it in there, rotate the crank, and we don't hit anything except the tool over here. Okay, then what I want to do is I want to take out one washer and make sure it doesn't hit. And so the cam will not hit the crank pin at all for any reason. Even if you left off one washer that you can't physically do because it hits on the case. So we have to worry about anything hitting there except the crank pin hitting the case. And I think if we dropped it down to within 20 thou of the hitting, that's a little bit too close. So I'm going to go ahead and live with the rod being offset a little bit, and we'll leave it at that. So that shim washer in there took care of our problem of the case not being right. So you just have to figure out some way of fixing stuff when you come across problems. Okay, last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this back apart. I'm going to show you how to check your piston and flywheel clearances. So we'll do that next here. Okay, I got the flywheel mocked up on our left case here. We're going to check our rod, the piston, the flywheel, and piston and rod at the bottom of cylinders. Whenever you're doing a stroker motor, you need to check this kind of stuff. So the first thing you got to do is make sure your rods got the right spread. So you want to make sure you got a minimum of 3 1/8 inches from the inside of the wrist pin hole to the inside of the wrist pin hole. So that would be right here. And if you can see, we're down here about 2 3/4 inches on this set because they've been cut. So stock rods usually hit way about out here. So you have to go in here and grind inside down here, right down there where my finger is, to make room for the other rod. And if you look at this set, it's been cut down in there. S&S rods and aftermarket rods are made for clearance. Stock rods are not. So when you start running 4 1/2 inch strokes or more, you definitely got to start looking. Usually 4 1/2 will clear, but not always. But 5/8 and 3/4 hit a lot of times, especially a 3/4 stroke like this is. So you got to check that stuff out. Okay, we already looked at our piston clearance, and we know that our offset's going to work now. It's just a matter of putting our cylinders up on here and looking how things fit. So I'm going to do that right now. Get this up here, we can see it a little bit maybe. Get our wrist pins in here. Now these particular pistons, these have equal cutouts, so there's no front or rear. Both of these notches here are the same, right there. On older pistons, they had one that was cut real high up, and the other one was short. So this one here doesn't matter which one's which. It does matter because one's a 1/4 thou different size, but for now it doesn't really matter. So your notch always goes in the center of the V, which is where they hit. That's where your pistons will hit each other at the bottom of the stroke. So you do that. You take a cylinder, you put it on the bike, make sure you got the rear on the rear. I just block them up with a piece of wood here. And then we take the front one, do the same thing. This has to be done before you put the case together, as you can tell. Okay, so now we got our top end locked up. Obviously you can see where the piston top dead center is. So this motor here is going to put the piston pretty far up in our deck height. So you got to make sure that that's going to not stick above that surface. You'll have a problem. And the next thing is we look at our bottom clearances. So we have, let me grab my scale in here, we can see in here. You got to check your rod to cylinder clearance down here. Make sure it hits here. You got to make sure your cylinder's got clearance right here. And then you also got clearances on the back side over here. This is hard to see, but this one here is real easy. See the big gap right here? Being an aftermarket case, it's cut away pretty heavily for clearance. Stock ones, they hit there usually. Then your next thing that comes up over here, this rod here will just about never hit on that track. There's too much gap. But you see that piston coming down right there? And you can see why it's cut out like it is. So you got to make sure it does not hit the cylinder right here. That's why it's cut there. And if you look right now, the other piston's coming down to say hello also. And you got to make sure that they have clearance through here. And these 6-inch scales are 15 thou thick. They work real good for checking stuff. S&S wants you to run a lot more clearance, so you got to use this fat one here, which is a 16th thick. And you want to check it. Me, I'm closer. If it doesn't hit, it doesn't hit. The other thing you got to make sure is that the piston right here does not come down. Here's the flywheel. All S&S pistons now are clearance for these 5-inch strokes, and this isn't 5-inch. It's got tons of clearance. So me, I'd rather have a longer skirt piston, but they make one piston fits everything nowadays, so it doesn't matter what I like. So you got to make sure all this clearance through here clears. Make sure the rod clears. Make sure your piston clears here. Okay, that's one side. Then you go all the way around, and the front rod now comes up, and those will hit over here sometimes. But you make sure that clears. And also the rear rod over here on this side, you got to make sure it clears your case. All aftermarket case, all stock Harley cases will hit heavily through here. You got to do a lot of clearancing. Obviously, this case here, we got probably clearances for probably close to 5-inch stroke in this thing. But those are all the areas that hit, and that's all stuff you got to check. So this is the only way you can check that kind of stuff. So you got to do it before you put the cases together. And then if you want to make sure you got the same length rods and everything, you look at that piston, and you look at this one over here, and they should be the same heights. If you got one different than the other, that means your cylinders are cut differently, or you got mismatched parts, or something's going on. So right now you can pretty much see everything that needs to be seen, and it's definitely the time to fix it is now. And you should have these nuts tight when you're doing all this checking, but right now I don't have any studs in there. Those are just laying in the holes. So, all right, well I got these Ultimate cases to work now. So the offset on that 10 pin's wrong, but I'll tell them their cases are being made wrong, and they hopefully will fix the problem. And then everything else seems to be working satisfactory for what we got. So this is our 98-inch motor with 4 3/4 stroke, and you can see the clearances, how they all clear. So now we go get these cases polished up and put a real motor together.